This is Clayton Howe's Entertainment X. For this very special episode, I bring back one of my earlier ones with Jonathan Groff. Jonathan Groff and I have a fantastic conversation about his upbringing, journey into theater, his thoughts and philosophies on performing, and so much more. So, I hope you enjoy this part one, re-air, with Jonathan Groff. We are back, and today with me is Jonathan Groff.
Hello, hello.
Jonathan, hello. Thank you for spending some time with me in this whirlwind of a trip
Of course.
you're having here in New York.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Before you head back to
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
To continue filming
Yeah.
Mindhunter
Season 2. We're shooting episodes 1 and 2 right now, and we flew in Saturday morning. We actually shot until 5:30 a.m. Saturday morning / Friday night.
Oh, geez.
And then flew in, and we get to do press this weekend for the show. It was really fun.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, well, we were talking a little bit about it before we started the filming process.
Yeah.
And how quick it is, but not quick. There's not a lot of sitting around, but you get a lot done.
Yeah.
You can leave and come back.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's so different than theater.
It's so different than theater.
Are you enjoying it more? Or is there really it's just different?
It's so different, yeah. I mean, this job is kind of like theater. It's unique in that the scenes that we do on the show a lot of them are 12-page scenes. The big kind of centerpiece scenes of the show, the interview scenes or the big conversation scenes. And so it is kind of like theater because I feel when we do the takes that I lose myself in I've become less aware of the cameras and stuff when you're doing such a long scene, and it feels like a scene written by a playwright, kind of, because they're so long and psychological and complicated. So in some ways, this job does feel like theater.
David Finch is your director.
David Fincher, yep.
I had read an interview that you had. I don't remember through what or how, but it was talking about how he really pulls out the acting. Mm-hmm. He notices what someone's like personal tics are.
Yes. To
accentuate them or remove them.
I guess depends, but in most cases removes, because his style is very. For example, all of the chairs have to be the same height, and everything's very organized and contained, and little movements, every movement or everything that happens is very intentional in his work. My friend was going in to audition for the show, and he asked if I had any pointers, and I said, and this is sort of across the board for all the actors that go in for David, don't move your forehead, don't blink, don't go up at the ends of your sentences. So don't go up like I just did. Don't go up at the ends of your sentences. Yeah. You know, like that. Like a Valley Girl, like I do all the time when I talk, and I'll probably do all throughout this interview.
A lot of questions.
Yeah, don't go up at the end, And then don't musicalize the writing. So don't make it flowery. Don't put a lot of breaks in it. Don't segment it. But just be very direct and specific. Yeah. And so that's David's style. And so the thing with me was I smile a lot in my real life. That's my kind of one of my tics that I do. And when I first met with David about the character, he was saying that the character is charmless and doesn't have enough sense of self to be engaging in the way that actors are engaging with people, and kind of needy and wanting people to love them. Yeah. This character is not like that. And so he said, we have to get rid of you smiling all the time. You can't smile. And I didn't realize how often I smile in my life, and it was the one thing that he kind of zeroed in on me, and it was this running thing, this kind of running joke, but also a serious thing, where it completely transformed the way that I acted. Even in scenes with my girlfriend, the idea of doing a love scene or a sort of meet cute scene and not smiling was a challenge to me. You know, when you're flirting with someone, not being able to smile.
I'm trying to think how that would play out in my mind.
But that it really in a direct way taught me so much about the character, that even in a scene where he's hitting on this girl, he's not charming in that way that we normally think people would be.
Yeah. What has David's like directing techniques taught you in working like on a scene? Are there any like?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is it's really essential for the story and the character and the words of a scene to be very clear in regards to what they're about and what you're dramatizing.
Okay.
And the job of the actor in his world, and hopefully in anything that's really well written, is simply to deliver that. And sometimes as actors, I enjoy making a meal out of something. But I guess the short answer is, at the end of the day, it's for the audience. And at the end of the day, we're telling a story for an audience. And the most simple, direct, and uncomplicated way we can deliver that story to the audience the best. And not uncomplicated in that we're not telling complicated stories or expressing complicated thoughts, but that what we're expressing and how we're expressing it is very clear.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about Mindhunter a little bit later, but since we're on it, I'm just going to ask these questions now.
Okay, great.
What have you learned about human behavior from playing Holden Ford in Mindhunter?
Well, I learned a lot about my own human behavior in that I try to smile less in my real life, and I try to go. I learned in the going up at the ends of the sentences how much we are asking for permission and how much we're asking, how needy I am. I should not say you, I should say I. How needy I am in real life.
Yeah. No,
in wanting people to understand what I'm talking about, doing that kind of thing. So I try to do that less. And then human behavior, I would, as far as the serial killers and stuff, I was not a true crime fan going into this. I didn't know a lot about serial killers going into this. So just sort of the kind of classifications and labels and dissecting of, disorganized versus organized and spree killers and the different kind of basic knowledge of serial killers was new for me. And then sitting and listening to... because we do with David a lot of takes and we do scenes many times, and sitting in these scenes and listening to these killers talk about their motivations is just so fascinating and
lightly put.
Yeah. Just sort of we learned a lot. I personally learned a lot about how a lot of them come from broken homes, and a lot of them have complicated relationships with their mothers, and 9 times out of 10 they're white males, and all this stuff that I just didn't know before. I learned through doing the show, and it's all the stuff that you kind of see in the show.
Yeah. And real quick plug, when does the second season
I don't know
come out? We don't know yet.
Yeah, sometime in 2019, because
cool.
we're shooting it through this year,
Great.
so I can't imagine that it would come out before. Yeah, because with Netflix, it all has to come out at the same time, so it wouldn't come out before December.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna do a little jumping around here. I want to go back to the beginning for you a little bit. Mm-hmm. What was the first show you were in growing up?
I was in, I don't know if this counts, but I was Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
That counts.
In my dad's barn with my brother and our friends. We put on a production of the Wizard of Oz.
How old were you?
I was 4.
Oh my goodness. Was it your idea or was it?
It was, I definitely, when I watch the video back, I definitely am helping people through their parts, and I know everybody's lines, but I can't tell. My brother was technically the director, so could have been a collaboration. I would have never also been able to do it because it's my older brother, if he was not behind it. Yeah. So I'm sure he probably orchestrated it in some way, but maybe I pitched the idea. I don't remember the incarnation.
Huh. Are there any standout values that your parents taught you growing up?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Hard work is the first one that comes to mind. Both my parents are really disciplined, and they made me, mow my grandmother's lawn, and my dad trains and races horses for a living, and I would have to come over on Saturdays once I was in high school and shovel horse poop out of the stalls and stuff, and I remember thinking, anything is better than this.
Yeah. You're like, anything.
Yeah, so just having those moments of having those moments of just kind of discipline and having to do work that you don't want to do, but you have to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I think is good in character building. And my parents are also, they're just great people. And the other thing they did for me that was really great and I think really unique and great parenting is that they are jocks. And my mom was a gym teacher, and they both played basketball in high school. But my brother and I are not jocks, and they really supported us and allowed us to do what we wanted. And instinctually, my mom, this was kind of before Oprah, in the early 80s. My mom let me dress up as Dorothy in drag, when I was 4.
Yeah.
And let us play and kind of be free and express ourselves and drove me to play practice.
Do you think there was ever a thought in her mind, or it was just like, that's just who she is?
I think it's who she is. She just kind of really wanted to be a mom. She really wanted to have kids. But she never did that thing where, at least as far as my career or my imagination was concerned, she never did that thing where she put expectation on me of, oh no, I don't want you to do theater. I want you to do sports, so I'm going to force you into soccer practice, even though you don't really want to, because it's what I want for you, which I think we see a lot in parenting.
Yeah.
And she's also there. Also, both my parents are very kind of, they don't take things too seriously. That's
the balance in life, not taking things too seriously, but being disciplined.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's
exactly.
Because I've heard this phrase a bunch of times, discipline equals freedom. I don't know if you...
Totally. I just read this book, The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp, which is an amazing book.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And she talks about how she wakes up every morning and has this she talks about rituals, one of the parts of her book, and how powerful rituals are and how rituals can unlock creativity and how discipline, especially because she comes from the dance world, unlocks creativity. And in the course of the book, she talks about Mozart and all these different people's throughout history, all these different artists' creative processes, and how hard work and discipline is actually what allows people to express talent and creativity, and how, yes, of course, sometimes someone out of the gate comes out with something that's amazing that was just an instinctual moment of self-expression, whether it's a musician or a playwright or an actor or a director or whatever. But you need discipline, and you need that. Anyone who's succeeded has had discipline.
Yeah.
There's that it's whatever, or even Barbra Streisand, who's, never had a voice lesson and can just sing amazingly. She did so many things other than singing. She's so disciplined and so passionate and such a perfectionist.
I noticed that a lot of people at the top of their game are very, very disciplined. There's that real, even and we'll get to this, of course. We're going to talk about Hamilton for a second.
Yeah.
But even I just keep thinking about Lynn writing all of that. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight.
Totally.
That takes hard work, dedication.
Totally.
And discipline.
Absolutely.
When did you decide to go into theater, professionally, or really follow it?
I did. So I did The Wizard of Oz, and then I took a break. I took a long leave of absence. And then I did plays in middle school, one in 7th grade where I was in the ensemble, and then in 8th grade where I had a lead part.
Yeah.
And my 8th grade drama teacher, Mrs. Fisher, Sue Fisher, shout out to Sue Fisher, she pulled me aside after a rehearsal and said, you should really think about pursuing this as a career, because I think you have what it takes to make it. And I had never thought about it as a career, honestly, until that point.
Yeah.
And there's this great theater in Lancaster called the Fulton Opera House that's an equity theater.
Yeah.
And they were not equity at the time, actually. They became equity while I was working there in high school. And they were doing a production of Peter Pan a couple of months after Sue had told me to pursue it. And I went to that audition and ended up doing that. And then through that kind of met actors that were from New York It was such, I mean, I moved to New York when I was 19, and I don't know if I would have done that if I had not met these actors at the Fulton Opera House who were from New York, and I could talk to them and ask them questions. Because Lancaster is, it's 2.5 hours from New York, but it's a farming town.
It's a different
basically.
town.
It's a completely different thing.
Completely different.
And I learned so much from these actors, and then I worked at this community theater called the Ephrata Playhouse also in Pennsylvania. And so it was high school theater and those two theaters in my hometown that inspired me to move to New York.
What was the advice that you were getting from people at the Fulton Opera House in terms of, were you asking, like, should I go to New York? Should I go to New York? Or should I do this as a...
I was asking them, how they live in New York, how they go to auditions. I learned about Backstage Magazine and then subscribed to it after talking to those actors. And then as far as the performing of it all and the learning how to act aspect of it, I watched. That was my thing. That's still my thing, is watching and stealing.
Hey,
watching and stealing. So
Yeah.
I was in the ensemble of a lot of the shows at the Fulton, and I would sit in the wings, and I would sit in the wings in rehearsal, and I would sit in the wings during the show, and I would just watch people work, and I was a sponge, and I would kind of just soak it up. I would just soak everything up. We did a production of The Pirates of Penzance.
Okay.
And I was a cop, so I was only in the second act. And every day I would go up to the galley, the way above the mezzanine, and I would watch the show every single day. And I would notice the subtle changes or the lack of subtle changes, and I would pick up things along the way. And I learned so much from watching, and I still do. Yeah. And it's the sort of one of the great things about Mindhunter, I think of it so much, is that I get to watch and really listen to all of these great actors that we interview that come in and play the serial killers or the guest stars. A lot of the job for me on Mindhunter is sitting and listening and watching how people work is so fascinating, especially people that come in for a couple of days on a set, just how they behave and how they are prepared or how they are not prepared, how they work with David, how David responds to them. It's just really interesting. It's
It's got to be fascinating.
Yeah, it's really great.
Are there common themes among, like, the people top performers that you work with, even across all mediums?
Absolutely. Coming in off book is essential.
No.
It's a balance of discipline and freedom, where being completely prepared and then showing up ready for anything to happen.
Ready to play.
Yes, exactly.
Chill.
That is the thing. That it's the people that come in really prepared with specific ideas of what they want to do, and they're unmovable. Those people, it does not work out well for them. But the people that come in prepared with ideas, but then are ready at the drop of the hat to change that idea and do something completely different, those are the ones that really succeed.
Wow. When you auditioned for, correct me if I'm wrong, because I got a lot of this from the internet, you were in The Sound of Music?
Yeah.
And which kept you from going to college?
Yeah.
Or you decided not to go to college because of The Sound of Music?
Yeah, exactly.
Were you auditioning for both those things at the same time? Was it like a whole bunch of, you're just like shows and colleges?
It's so funny you say this, because it actually has all come full circle this year as of 3 weeks ago, because I auditioned for colleges and got accepted to Carnegie Mellon for musical theater, and also via Backstage, which I had learned about from working at the Fulton, went on this audition for... I came to New York for a week, and I auditioned for Thoroughly Modern Millie. They're for Broadway replacements and the national tour, because that was my favorite show. Yeah. And I met Rob Ashford, and that was really exciting, and then I got cut from that. And then I also auditioned for this non-equity, went to an open call for this non-equity tour of The Sound of Music. Yeah. And I told my friends at the time and my mom, I want to go to New York and audition to practice for my college auditions. Which I don't know if I was just saying that, or if there was this instinctual part of me that knew I wasn't ready to go to college yet, and knew that I wanted to just start doing it. Yeah. I don't know what that was about, but I did go to New York and audition for these things while I was auditioning for colleges. And so I ended up getting accepted to Carnegie Mellon and then getting this Sound of Music tour. And I went to Carnegie Mellon to visit, to sort of talk to the faculty about what I should do. Yeah. And they were kind of saying, tour would be great, but you should really, come here and train and whatever. but I just wanted to perform, and I learned so much from doing there was a bunch of factors that went into play. One, I was kind of excited to go on the road and see the country at 18 and, do a bus and truck tour and like have a experience away from home and whatever. I also college, I think Carnegie Mellon was $40,000 at that time. I think it's now $60,000 a year. And so the idea of making some money seemed like a good idea instead of paying $40,000 a year. And so I decided to go on tour, and the voice teacher at Carnegie Mellon, Gary Klein, was kind of my point person that I talked to a lot. I really bonded with him during the audition process, and we kind of talked it through, and he sort of gave me his blessing, and I decided to defer my admission for a year and go on tour and then come back in the fall.
Okay.
And so I went on tour, and it was a non-union tour. I ended up making in total $10,000 on the whole year that I was on tour. Yeah. And I went, okay, $10,000 into $40,000 still seems insane to me after being on the road for a year. And then I was thinking, what if I spend 4 years at college and I moved to New York and I hate it. Yeah. And I've just spent all this money preparing and I hate New York.
Yeah.
And so I decided to take my $10,000 and not go to Carnegie Mellon and move to New York instead. And so I moved to 51st between 8th and 9th with a girl that I met from the Fulton Opera House and got a job waiting tables with nothing. It was kind of a risky move because I had no net. Right. But I just felt in my gut that I wanted to move to New York.
Were you nervous? Or did it feel completely like you're like, this is right?
It felt so right. I wasn't nervous at all. I was only 19, but I had also, when the tour had closed in May of 2004, I went back home to my hometown and I taught at a theater camp for the summer, and then I did a community theater production of Bat Boy in September and October right before I moved to New York. And that production of Bat Boy was I felt like such a star doing Bat Boy in the community theater, and it gave me a lot of confidence. Playing that role was so fun and exciting, and it's such a great part, and I was really feeling myself.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, just
because it's just such an awesome part, and such a physical part, and I didn't know if I could sing the role before I went into it, and it was really pushed me in all the best ways. And sometimes doing a show can change the way you feel about yourself. I mean, it's so crazy, but that was that was an experience I had where doing Bat Boy really made me feel like a rock star. I mean, it quickly went away 2 months later when I was getting rejected at every audition in New York. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
As much as something can build you up, it's so easy to then get taken down. But when I moved to New York, I was coming off of Bat Boy Community Theater and feeling, I had buzzed all the hair off my head, and I was feeling like a rock star. And so when I moved to New York, I kind of felt like I had that confidence, that brazen confidence of a 19-year-old. Going, I did this tour and I played Bat Boy, and now here I am, New York. Like, get ready for it. And then spent a year of auditioning and not getting anything, and the confidence slowly starts to get sucked away. And then I learned kind of how to maintain creative excitement while doing the demoralizing thing of going to 3 auditions in a day.
And then working.
And then waiting tables, Although I do have to say, my dad said I've never been more excited on the phone than when I got my waiting tables job.
Really?
Yeah, because I just felt like I walked into this restaurant, I lied, I had no experience waiting tables. It was the first place I walked into, they hired me, and I just felt like such a New Yorker. I just felt that I was living the dream. Oh my God, I'm living in New York, and I'm waiting tables, and I'm trying to be an actor. This is what it's all about. I was so excited. Yeah. I just played Bat Boy at the community theater. Do you know what I mean? I'm on fire right now.
I am living the New York City life.
Yeah, exactly.
Was your Broadway debut My Life?
In My Life, yeah,
In My Life,
what it's called. Yeah,
and you were the swing and understudy of the lead.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so I'm so curious about this. Before we work our way to the more recent stuff, what did you learn about being an understudy and a swing, and how did that translate into like playing leading roles?
Whew, yeah,
It's a big question.
Like,
Okay, I'll
I mean, you didn't ask me I was really excited because it was Broadway, and also because I knew that it just felt so right, because I'm such a learn by watching had always been my thing.
Yeah.
And I'd always, like at the Fulton, I was always watching, and then after 3 years of watching, I started playing roles in the other theater. The Ephrata Playhouse was giving me parts, and I was playing roles, but after years of watching. And so it felt so right that for my first experience on Broadway, I got to watch and kind of be a fly on the wall. And so being an understudy, I understudied Christopher Hankey, and it was so, and I was also the dance captain.
Yes, you were.
And so I really, not because I'm a great dancer necessarily, but because it's, there has to be a dance captain, even if it's not a dance show, for any Broadway show.
All right.
But so I had to learn everybody's blocking and write it down. So I was not only watching the acting, but I was watching the blocking and learning about the lighting and learning about where people stand on. It was just the most amazing learning experience, where people stand in numbers on the stage and how blocking changes, and all of that stuff was technically just amazing to kind of be forced to learn that, because you have to write it all down in a giant book as the dance captain. So that was a great learning experience. And then also, the show was so hated and so made fun of and so sort of spat on by the community, that also and these actors who were so talented had to go to the theater every night knowing that everyone was making a joke out of what they were doing, and watching how they kind of rallied and made the most of it and did it despite the bad energy around them was also a learning lesson.
Yeah.
In that, when I went and did Spring Awakening, it was like the opposite, where we were getting all this praise, but we still had to go and do the show as though we weren't getting that praise. We still had to go and just do the show the way that we knew how to do it. It was weirdly similar. The cast of In My Life had to do the show despite the bad press, and the cast of Spring Awakening had to go do the show despite the good press.
Was that a company conversation where they're like, listen, this is a big hit, but we can't go out there and perform in it like it's a big hit. We have to tell the story.
Michael never. That was a conversation during Hamilton that Tommy Kail gave to the cast, but it was different with Michael Mayer, because Hamilton was a blockbuster from before it even started. But with Spring Awakening, it was a different thing, where we couldn't sell half the house during previews on Broadway. And when we moved into the theater, and I went into my dressing room, and Michael Mayer came into the dressing room and said, wow, here we are. And I said, Michael, I don't know how I'm going to decorate my dressing room. And he said, well, I wouldn't decorate it because I don't know if we're going to be here that long. And it wasn't until and some nights during previews, our stage manager would come over the mic and say, okay, you guys, so you're going to see a lot of velvet in the velvet seats. It's purple velvet seats in the theater at the Eugene. You're going to see a lot of velvet tonight, but just know that there are 500 people in the audience, which is twice the amount of people that we had off Broadway at the Atlantic. So just think of it as double the size of what we did off Broadway. I mean, we were like, this is not going to... we're not going to last. And then we got a great New York Times review, which allowed us to go until March, and then it all dropped off again. And then the Tonys happened, and then we were fine. Yeah. But it didn't, for us, we were always, it was a real surprise, the success of the show. And the Tonys, we couldn't believe that we won 8 Tony Awards. It was all a complete surprise for us. So there was never... Then once the Tonys happened, we were like, what is all these people are so into the show, but 6 months ago we couldn't sell the show. So it was easy for us to do the show and not feel like we got big heads about it, because it was such a struggle for such a long time to find an audience.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.